Today is my 24-hour Hunger Games readathon, and I decided I was going to do a vlog for it. So far, I've only listened to books because it is hard to sit down and read for 24 hours. I've been up since 6 o'clock this morning. I read 150 pages and finished The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. It is fantastic. Highly recommend if you are a fantasy fan or just I don't know, man, I would recommend it to almost anybody. But right now I am attempting to finish the first book in the Hunger Games for the book with a black cover prompt, and I am picking up groceries, as you can tell. And I also went to Krispy Kreme, and the coffee they gave me was terrible. So now I'm going to go try to find iced coffee from somewhere that doesn't suck. So I'll check back in with you guys later. Okay, so I am back home. I have done my grocery shopping. I have delivered the donuts to the fam, and I have been listening to the Hunger Games for the last 30 or 40 minutes consistently. Rue, this is a spoiler if you haven't read the Hunger Games, which seems crazy to me, but I know that there's people out there who haven't. But so Rue just died, and man, these books in general, every time I reread them, I think about things like the writing. The writing in this is very simple. Like, you would never read this and be like, man, that's some beautiful writing. You just wouldn't. It's extremely simple, very easy to read, but it is hard hitting, I feel like. And maybe you disagree. That's fine. But the characters are very complex for such a simple book. The fact that it takes place in a dystopian North America saves a lot of time on actual world building because we understand what is like in America. So you're mostly just explaining how the government works. And I really enjoy it. I got teary-eyed when Rue died. I always do, even though you don't really know her that well, but you do know that she is the oldest of a family of 6, that she is 12 years old, that she lives in a district where people legit get murdered for trying to feed themselves, and that there was no one to volunteer for her. There was nobody else. She had to go. Like, it is basically the situation where, like Prim, it's Prim, you know what I mean? She represents Prim, like, Katniss seeing this 12-year-old girl in the games and knowing that, like, there was no one there for her like she could be. You know, she's the oldest. All her siblings are younger than her. She's been taking care of them and helping her mom, just like Katniss has been taking care of Prim and helping her mom. And I don't know, I really love this book. And I don't know if it's nostalgia that makes me view it in such a positive light. I don't know that if I read it now, I would feel the same way about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's nostalgia or if it's just that this is just a good book. I don't know. Either way, I appreciate it every time I read it. And I really do think, even though I know there's a love triangle in it, okay, I do. But in my opinion, I don't feel like that overpowers the actual plot. Like, when I think of the Hunger Games, I don't think about Katniss having to choose between Gale and Peeta. I think about the violence and the oppression of the Capitol and the gruesomeness, and, like, thinking about having children sent every year to fight to the death in the games and having all these people watch them go die. Like, I don't think about, like, Katniss is like, the farthest thing from her mind is who she wants to marry. You know what I mean? It's just not something that she worries about, which I also appreciate in these books. I appreciate that Katniss is like, bruh, like, I get that you like me and all, but I'm sort of concentrating on not dying right now. So if we could maybe pause the romance for, like, a brief moment and, like, consider, like, real world issues as opposed to just, like, how your feelings toward me. So I don't know. That's how I feel. I'm most likely gonna finish it today. It's like 1 o'clock and I have 4 hours left in the audio. So I'll probably just start Catching Fire right away afterward and go right into Mockingjay. I doubt I'll finish Catching Fire today, but I could tomorrow, honestly. They're pretty quick reads. They're only, like, I don't know, a little over 300 pages. And, yeah, and I have the audio, so I flop back and forth between reading it and listening to it, so I can power through them pretty quick. Hello, good morning. It's been a few days since I filmed, mostly because on the weekends I'm hanging out with my family and my kids and everything. It's just hard to stop doing what I'm doing to record anything. So I finished the 24-hour readathon. I've completed the rest of Rage of Dragons. I finished the first book in the Hunger Games, and I read about 80 pages of Catching Fire. I'm alternating between books now. I received an arc of the Court of Miracles. I'm doing that on ebook. I'm half reading, half listening to Catching Fire because I have the audio, but I'm trying to read it mostly physically. And then just now, my library, I got The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and I'm intrigued by it. I wasn't sure. I was kind of going into it with a little bit of a negative view, mostly just because it doesn't seem like the kind of book I would like. But the narrator, I believe, is the same narrator from Kaz from Six of Crows. So the narration is good, and it's not first person, which I also praise it for because I don't really enjoy reading YA books that are first person. They just seem really whiny and just not as good. But yeah, I'm only like a chapter or so in, but essentially the main character's name is Blue Sargent, and she is from a family that is psychic, and she's got this prophecy, sort of like, not prophecy, but like a reading from tarot cards, and all the psychics agree that her true love, once she kisses him, is destined to die. And whether that is from her kissing him and making him die, or like they kiss and then eventually, I don't know, but there's not really like specifics of how he dies or why, but just that her true love, once they've kissed, will die. And so she goes to this graveyard or something. I actually don't know where they are. I've been doing the dishes. I have to back up a little bit, so I think I missed the setting. But basically she's somewhere with her aunt, I think actually at a church, and she usually can't see ghosts like her family can. She doesn't seem very clairvoyant. She just kind of does paperwork, and she sees a ghost for the first time, and her aunt is like, yeah, either that's your true love or you kill him. That's the only reason you'll be able to see him. So I'm intrigued. I'm interested to see where this is going to go. And I'm actually looking forward to reading it now. So yeah, I'll check back in with you guys later. Hey, just checking back in. I am going to go ahead and get ready for my day, which consists of not a whole lot, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying home. It is Monday. I have Zoom classes to direct my child to, and things to clean and cooking, and I've actually already started cooking dinner because I'm making meatballs and sauce, and so that's always a whole process. Like, I like to make the meatballs in the pan and deglaze it afterward to get all the like crunchies and the little bits of onions and stuff that have fallen out with wine, and then I start my sauce in that same pot, and then I'll let that cook for a few hours, and then I'll put the meatballs in and let it finish like that. So it's a whole day process. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and I have plans to film tonight my April wrap up, which I haven't done yet, because for no real reason other than I just been putting it off. But I did make like a document today so that I can do that tonight, so I could see how many books I read and kind of get a feeling for what I wanted to say about them and all that. So that's what I've been doing. I've also read up to page 200 of Catching Fire, which is my favorite book in the Hunger Games, to be really honest. I don't know. I guess because the characters are more developed in it, and just the whole premise of it, and the unfairness of it, I just feel like it's just such a solid book. I've also listened to, I believe, up to chapter 8 in The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and I'm still intrigued by it. Like, it's obviously YA, like there's no question about it, but the main character, I said it was Blue Sargent, but there's also Gansey and Adam, I believe, and then Ronan. They're like a group of boys that go to this like fancy academy for rich people. I think they're just in high school, and a couple of them come from money, and there's obviously one with a darker past and one that comes from nothing and no money, and it's the crew of them, and they kind of like just so happen to run into Blue Sargent while she's at work one day, and that is what is going on. I don't feel like that's spoilery. I think that's just, the general direction the plot is going. So that is what we are doing. I think tonight I will go take my
oldest out to look for animals. It is, as, I don't know, you might not know, but I live in Alaska, and we finally have spring, which means the bears are out of hibernation, the porcupine are out, the moose are more active, and the base that I live on, my husband's in the Army, we live on a military base, has like a crazy number of animal sightings. There's even like a whole wildlife page dedicated to it because you see so many out here. So, and the best time to go is in the evening, the 7, 8, kind of like when the sun sets, but because it is getting to summertime here, our sun doesn't really set. Like right now, it's still light out at like 10 p.m. and it will continue to stay lighter until midnight, where it's the land of the midnight sun, as they say. And so you can kind of just go look for animals at crazy times, but dusk is usually the most recommended. That's that for now. I'm ready for my day. It is literally 1 o'clock, but my youngest, who is 16 months old, takes a nap around now, so I just put him down for a nap, which is my first opportunity to really do anything for myself. Most of my morning I basically just clean and organize and do the literal mountains of laundry that always seem to exist in my house. So I'll check back in later when things are more fun. I've been attempting to watch Les Mis with my husband, but it's really hard with 3 kids to watch a 2.5 hour long movie on a weeknight when one of us works pretty long hours. So, and I also wasn't sure if he would like it. So I started watching it a little bit to like kind of gauge, and I didn't know what it was about. I was just like, I don't know, it's just got Wolverine and Mia Thermopolis, and they're probably miserable. Like, that was my thoughts about it. And man, I'm already intrigued by it. I've only watched like maybe 25 minutes or so, but it seems so interesting, and I want to finish it before I finish the book so that I can draw some more, lines between the two and see how it kind of crosses over and how it's influenced by it. I've already seen a couple ways, so that's interesting. And yeah, I will get back to you. Hello. So I finally watched the entire movie of Les Mis, and I don't know how this has not been part of my life for this long. I loved it. I loved it so much. It had everything that I look for. Great characters, the intricacy of the way their characters' relationships worked throughout the story, the revolution, the music, just the morality of it, just so many things that I personally seek out in a story were in this story. Like, I feel like I'm going to need to read 1,300 pages so I can get this complete story. That's how much I really loved it. And going into this, I thought that watching this would make me appreciate the Court of Miracles more. And I think it may have had the opposite effect, because for me, what made this so good was not just like the setting, which it seems like Court of Miracles is mostly banking on, and some names and stuff. But it's the characters. It's the dynamic between Jean Valjean and Javert. And if you haven't watched this,
and you're like me, essentially, Jean Valjean steals some bread for his dying sister's child and gets sent to prison for 19 years. And Javert is the prison guard, and eventually Jean Valjean is released on parole, and he is given this new lease on life by this priest who gives him things, and he ends up establishing himself, and it's this whole fucking story. So Jean Valjean is technically doing something illegal, but what he's doing is morally right, whereas Javert is doing what is legally right but morally wrong. Like the way he treats people, his lack of compassion, whereas Jean Valjean, who is a criminal, he's a not escaped convict, but he bailed on his parole, and he's on the lam, and he has a new identity and stuff, and he's got this new lease on life where he's trying to help people, and Javert's trying to take him down because he's bailed on his parole, and so his duty is to bring him in, but he's not a bad person. He's actually doing really good, and by bringing him in, he will cause harm to all these other people. And the really wonderful thing about this is the way these things happen. It's like, if you do this, then this will happen, but if I do this, then this. It's all of these conundrums, like, what's the worst thing? What is the worst thing? How do you make the right choices without hurting people and or hurting yourself? And can you hurt yourself if it's morally right to save somebody else? Even though it will be literally life-altering, I don't know how I haven't watched this. I just don't understand how I've never watched this. It's crazy to me. I loved it so much. And so, with all that being said, the Court of Miracles, there's two characters so far that's names appear in the book. Cosette, which is Jean Valjean's adopted daughter, and in the book, Cosette is the adopted daughter of Eponine, Nina, the main character's father, who owns a inn, and he's kind of skeevy, and there's a character in Les Mis who's kind of a skeevy innkeeper, and they're kind of woven into the story, so there's like aspects of it like that, but for me, the themes are not there, and that's what really drove this movie home for me, was the themes. Like, it just was such a hard-hitting but also wonderful story. I just feel like going into this, making this book as simple as it is, I want to say it's I don't know, maybe right under 400 pages. I can't recall specifically, but I think that if you're going to try to do this story and say it's like inspired by it, I think the important part would be to capture maybe more of the ambiance and just like the things that are happening in it, the difficult things that the characters go through and the intricacies of the characters, as opposed to just kind of taking the names from it and just sort of inserting it into this really dark, like, Paris setting, but not really developing it in any way. Like, I feel like I understand the book more now that I've watched the movie, but before, I just didn't feel like I knew the characters or really knew anything about anything. There was just so many names, so many things just kind of being thrown out there, different guilds, 16 different names for one person, just, I don't know. So I'm gonna keep reading Court of Miracles. Maybe it'll pull out a miracle. Maybe it will be a miracle, and I'll end up liking it. There's no way I like it a lot, though, because I'm telling you, I just had... It was like a life-altering experience in this movie. I don't even watch that many movies because I feel like because I'm a book reader and because I read so much, like, you guys probably understand what I mean. You know what you like in a story and you've read enough of them that sometimes watching a movie, the things that you're looking for that make a book good, they just can't execute as well in a short amount of time in a movie. So, like, a lot of times I don't feel like characters are developed enough, or just, I don't know. A lot of times I'm not a huge movie fan, so I don't watch that many of them because I just don't feel like I enjoy them as much. I prefer TV shows. I like a longer story. I just like more things happening, I guess. I want more time invested in it. I prefer book series to standalones. It's just something that I prefer. But either way, I love this movie. And I guess that's kind of that. I haven't been reading that much. I just haven't the last couple days. I think I read like
20% more of Court of Miracles. And I think actually I'm pretty close to finishing Catching Fire, if I'm not mistaken. I've been slowly listening to it. When I was driving around the other night, looking for animals and taking photos and stuff, I listened to it for like an hour and a half or 2 hours while I was out. So I'll probably finish that maybe tonight or tomorrow. So yeah, that's my update, guys. All right, it is Mother's Day, which means it is Sunday. I have not finished a book. Well, that is a lie. I finished Catching Fire. Loved it. It's my favorite book in the Hunger Games. I'm gonna wait to start Mockingjay, I think, just because I have some other books I want to finish. I'm about to sit down and drink tea and finish Court of Miracles, which I am still kind of having mixed feelings about. I feel like the character development is just so terrible, and also, instead of a love triangle, which I already don't like, there's basically a love square in this. Like, everybody loves the main character. Like, she's a Mary Sue. She's so perfect. She's good at everything for no reason. There's no explanation of why she's good at things other than the author being like, she's the best. But like, you don't know that because there's nothing that shows you that she's so good. And then yeah, like every male character that she comes in contact with is basically like head over heels in love with her instantly. So it's pretty annoying in that aspect. But there are some parts of it that I think are pretty interesting. I just think it's too complex of a plot and too long of a timeline to be put into this type of book. It just seems it's just not really working for me. But either way. Okay, well, I finished The Court of Miracles, and I have a lot of thoughts about it, honestly, and they're not all bad. And I didn't hate it at the end. Like, I felt like there were parts of it that were, you know, maybe a little bit far fetched. I didn't like the number of love interests in this, obviously. It is not something that I enjoy. I don't even like a love triangle. To have three love interests is just kind of annoying and unnecessary, even, I felt like, too. Like, the story had enough going for it without that having to be a main thing. But in fairness, it isn't like a major thing. Like, there's not like the main focus of the book is not on the love interest. So that's why it's kind of like, why bother? Like, or maybe just have one, two at the most, I guess, if you have to have multiples. But I don't know. But there were some positive things I felt like in it. I like the idea of a classic novel that's large and intimidating, like Les Mis is, and kind of twisting it. Like, it's like an alternate universe fan fiction version of it in a way. But it's also presented in a way that's more accessible than some of these other books are. So I like the concept of it. I think that could be a really interesting thing to do, like to continue with, honestly, because I don't know. I just feel like that's a good idea. Instead of doing fairy tale retellings, having classic novel retellings, I think that's kind of cool, and I would read more of those. And I don't know. I wish that more of the book. There were a lot of characters from Les Mis in this. Like, Javert is a detective. Jean Valjean is in it. They're not like the main focus though. Nina and Eddie, which are Eponine and Cosette, are the main characters for the most part. There's also a character kind of like Marius, and then Gavroche is a character, like, but they're not all, they're just little pieces of it, and the storyline isn't exact, obviously, but there are parts of it that that are almost directly from the book, the classic book, and so
I thought that was cool. I just think that there could have been maybe a few storylines clipped out of it, to make it a little bit more linear. There's a lot of time jumping that can be really jarring because it doesn't really, if you don't notice the years at the beginning of the different sections of the book, like, you won't notice. I had to go back to the beginning and like see what year it was when the book started, and then go to each different section and figure out, like, okay, so we started in this year, and so now this is actually like 10 years in the future. So I wish there was more that goes into that. And then character development, it was really weak, like really weak. Nobody was developed, I don't think. I feel like I was more connected to them after I watched the movie because I could envision who they were in the original. But as far as development within this world, I don't think that it was done at all for the most part. But I'm gonna actually do a whole review on this because I kind of want to. I have a lot to say about it, and there's a lot of things that I kind of want to discuss. So either way, if you're curious, I'll probably have that out in the next few weeks. So yeah, this is gonna be the end of this vlog. I'm not gonna finish the Raven Boys this week. I'm only like a quarter of the way through, and there's no way I listened to that all today. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first of my reading vlogs. Is this my first reading vlog? I think it is. Anyway, stay tuned, and there'll be more to come.